Hey, stop eating what you think is healthy, because one of the most commonly recommended meals for heart health is actually silently clogging your arteries right now. I'm Dr. Thomas, and after over 2 decades in cardiovascular surgery, I've watched patients come into my operating room convinced they were doing everything right. They were eating their grains, watching their fat intake, following the guidelines, and yet there they were, arteries so blocked we could barely get a catheter through. Today, I'm going to show you the #1 worst meal destroying arterial health in seniors, and I promise you the top item on this list is going to shock you completely. Before I get into the full breakdown, I want to share something that stopped me cold when I first read it. A landmark study published by the American Heart Association followed over 12,000 adults aged 60 and older for a period of 8 years. What they found was that dietary inflammation, not just fat, not just cholesterol, but the specific inflammatory response triggered by certain food combinations, was responsible for accelerating arterial plaque buildup by up to 47% faster in adults over 65 compared to younger individuals eating the exact same diet. 47% faster. That means the meals you're eating today are hitting your cardiovascular system in a fundamentally different way than they did when you were 45, and nobody is telling you this at your annual checkup. Now I'm going to reveal the #1 worst offender near the end of this video, and I guarantee it's sitting in your pantry right now. Most people over 60 are eating it multiple times a week, believing it's either neutral or even good for them. Stick with me all the way through, because understanding the full picture is what's going to save your life, not just knowing one item in isolation. But before we dive in, I want to ask you something personally. Drop a comment below and tell me your age and whether you've ever been told by a doctor that your cholesterol or arterial health is something to watch. I read every single comment on this channel. Everyone. And your answer genuinely helps me tailor future videos to exactly what you need to hear. Now, let's get into it. We're counting down from 5 to 1. 5 being seriously damaging, 1 being the absolute worst meal you can put in your body if you're over 60 and care about keeping your arteries clean, your blood pressure stable, and your heart beating strong for decades to come. Coming in at number 5, we have the classic fast food combo meal. And I'm not talking about the obvious burger and fries. I mean the specific combination of a processed meat sandwich, a large sugary drink, and a side of refined starch, all consumed together in one sitting. Now you might be thinking, Dr. Thomas, I already know fast food is bad, but here's what they never explain to you. It's not just that these foods are individually harmful, it's the synergistic inflammatory cascade that happens when you combine trans fats, high fructose corn syrup, and refined carbohydrates in a single meal. Research from the Cleveland Clinic found that this specific combination causes a spike in a marker called interleukin-6. Think of interleukin-6 like an alarm bell inside your blood vessels. When it rings, your arteries become inflamed, and inflamed arteries are sticky arteries. Plaque doesn't just float through a healthy artery. It latches onto inflamed walls the way lint clings to a sweater fresh out of the dryer. For people over 70, this is especially dangerous because of something called endothelial senescence, which simply means your artery linings have aged and lost some of their natural elasticity and self-repair ability. A 35-year-old can eat a fast food combo and recover relatively quickly. But Johns Hopkins researchers found that adults over 65 showed measurable arterial stiffness for up to 72 hours after a single high-inflammatory meal. 3 days of damage from one lunch. If you're having this kind of meal even once a week, you're giving your arteries almost no recovery time at all. I had a patient named Harold, 71 years old, retired electrician from Tucson, Arizona. Harold came in with 78% blockage in his left anterior descending artery, what we call the widowmaker. He hadn't had a single heart attack yet, but he was a time bomb. When I asked about his diet, he told me he'd been picking up a fast food meal 3 times a week because it was cheap, fast, and he thought the grilled chicken sandwich was the healthy choice. We got Harold on an anti-inflammatory dietary protocol, eliminated these combo meals entirely, and within 6 months his follow-up imaging showed measurable regression in soft plaque. He told me he felt 10 years younger. Harold's story isn't unusual. It's heartbreakingly common. Moving to number 4, and this one surprises almost everyone, the so-called heart-healthy margarine and white toast breakfast. For decades, Americans were told to ditch butter and use margarine to protect their hearts, and so millions of seniors trying to do the right thing made the switch. But here's the devastating truth. Many margarines, particularly older formulations still sitting on grocery store shelves, contain partially hydrogenated oils, the primary source of artificial trans fats. The FDA has taken steps to phase these out, but they haven't disappeared completely, and the damage from decades of consumption doesn't just reverse overnight. When you pair margarine, even some of the newer plant-based spreads that contain industrial seed oils like soybean and canola oil oxidized during high-heat processing, with white toast made from refined flour, you create a meal that does two terrible things simultaneously. First, it triggers a rapid glucose spike that promotes a process called glycation, where sugar molecules essentially attach themselves to proteins in your arterial walls, making them stiff and brittle like a rubber band left in the sun. Second, the oxidized fats in processed spreads directly damage your LDL cholesterol particles, turning them into what researchers call small, dense LDL. And it's this form of LDL, not regular cholesterol, that burrows into arterial walls and begins building plaque. A study out of Harvard's School of Public Health found that women over 60 who consumed the highest levels of refined carbohydrates combined with processed vegetable oils had a 38% higher rate of cardiovascular events compared to those eating whole food fats like olive oil and avocado. 38%, and they thought they were being careful. After 75, your body loses approximately 35% of its ability to neutralize oxidative stress, meaning the antioxidant systems that would normally mop up the damage from these oxidized fats become significantly less effective. You are far more vulnerable to this meal than you were at 50, and the guidelines written when you were 50 simply have not caught up with the science. Now, if you're finding this valuable and you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, please do that right now. Just hit that subscribe button below and tap the bell so you never miss a video. I release new content every week specifically designed for your age group, your concerns, and your health goals. And if this video is helping you see your diet differently, please give it a thumbs up. It helps me reach more seniors who desperately need this information. Coming in at number 3 is something so ordinary, so deeply embedded in what we consider a wholesome meal, that I almost hesitate to say it: the traditional deli meat sandwich with a glass of orange juice. This is the lunch that millions of retirees eat every single day. Turkey on whole wheat, maybe some mustard, a glass of OJ because fruit is good for you. And I understand why. It sounds reasonable. But let me walk you through why this specific combination is quietly ravaging arterial health in adults over 60. Processed deli meats, turkey, ham, roast beef, salami, are loaded with sodium nitrate, a preservative that the body converts into compounds called nitrosamines. Research from the World Cancer Research Fund and several independent cardiovascular studies have linked high nitrate intake to endothelial dysfunction, damage to the inner lining of your arteries. Think of your artery lining like the non-stick coating on a pan. When that coating is intact, nothing sticks. When nitrosamines start degrading it, suddenly plaque has something to grab onto. Now add the orange juice, and I know this feels like an attack on something sacred, but commercial orange juice, even the no sugar added variety, contains between 21 and 26 grams of sugar per cup with essentially no fiber to slow its absorption. When you drink it alongside a processed meat sandwich, you're delivering a massive glucose spike into a bloodstream already being irritated by nitrosamines. The insulin response that follows promotes triglyceride production in the liver, and elevated triglycerides are one of the most underappreciated drivers of arterial plaque in seniors. I had a patient named Margaret, 67, a retired school teacher from Columbus, Ohio. Margaret was the picture of a careful eater. She exercised, she watched portions, she avoided desserts. But she had a deli sandwich for lunch 6 days a week and orange juice every morning. Her triglycerides were 310, dangerously high, and her cardiologist had been treating it with medication for 3 years without explaining the dietary connection. Once we identified the pattern and replaced her lunch with a whole food alternative, her triglycerides dropped to 142 in 4 months. No medication change, just the meal. Now we are at number 2, and this is where most people start squirming, because number 2 is the breakfast that generations of Americans were raised to believe was the cornerstone of good health. A bowl of commercial breakfast cereal with low-fat milk and a piece of whole wheat toast. This breakfast has been marketed as heart healthy for 60 years. The boxes have little red hearts on them. Doctors recommended it. And it is, in my professional opinion, one of the most damaging things a person over 60 can eat first thing in the morning. Here's why. Commercial breakfast cereals, even the ones marketed as whole grain, even bran flakes, even granola, have been processed at temperatures and pressures that destroy essentially all of their natural fiber structure. What remains digests almost as rapidly as pure table sugar. A bowl of heart-healthy bran flakes raises blood glucose faster than a can of soda in many individuals. The glycemic index on some of these cereals sits between 70 and 83, higher than white bread. Pair that with low-fat milk, which has had its natural fat removed and is consequently digested even faster with less satiety, and a piece of whole wheat toast, which, unless it's made from genuinely intact whole grains and not just colored white flour, behaves identically to white bread in the bloodstream, and you have delivered a triple glycemic assault to your cardiovascular system before 8 in the morning. Research from Stanford University's Prevention Research Center found that repeated morning glucose spikes in adults over 65 were directly correlated with accelerated carotid intima media thickness. That's the medical term for how thick and plaque-laden the walls of your neck arteries are becoming. After 65, your pancreas produces insulin less efficiently, meaning these glucose spikes last longer and do more damage per episode. A 40-year-old burns through a serial-induced glucose spike in 45 minutes. A 70-year-old may be managing that spike for 2 to 3 hours, during which their arterial walls are bathed in inflammatory signals. I treated a man named Robert, 74, a former Marine from San Diego, California. Robert was disciplined about his diet. He believed he was eating by the rules. Cereal every morning, low-fat everything, minimal red meat. He came to me after a minor cardiac event, and his imaging showed extensive soft plaque throughout his coronary arteries. Robert was devastated. He felt betrayed by the guidelines he'd trusted. Once we overhauled his morning routine, eggs with vegetables, whole food fats, no cereal, his inflammatory markers dropped significantly within just 8 weeks. He told me it was the first time in years he felt mentally sharp before noon. And now we arrive at number 1, the single worst meal for arterial health in adults over 60. Are you ready? Because I know this is going to be difficult to hear. The number 1 worst meal for clogging your arteries is the combination that looks like this: a plate of pasta or white rice with a jarred tomato or cream sauce, accompanied by garlic bread and followed by a small, healthy dessert like low-fat yogurt or a granola bar. This meal, this specific combination, is eaten by tens of millions of seniors across this country multiple times every week. It is served in senior centers. It is recommended by well-meaning nutritionists working from outdated guidelines. And it is, metabolically speaking, one of the most destructive things an aging cardiovascular system can face. Here is why this combination is in a category of its own. Refined pasta and white rice are pure glucose delivery systems. A standard serving of pasta raises blood glucose to levels comparable to drinking straight corn syrup. The garlic bread adds another glycemic surge and, critically, provides the oxidized seed oils from commercial spreads used to make it. The jarred sauce, whether tomato or cream-based, is packed with sodium, added sugars, and often contains preservatives that promote systemic inflammation. And the low-fat yogurt or granola bar at the end? More refined sugar, more glucose, more inflammatory signal. What you have created with this meal is something researchers at the University of California, San Francisco described as a metabolic perfect storm. The total glycemic load of this meal in a single sitting can exceed what the average adult over 65 should consume in an entire day. Their research found that adults over 60 who regularly consumed high glycemic meals showed arterial plaque progression 52% faster than those eating low glycemic whole food diets, 52% faster plaque accumulation, and remember the stat I shared at the beginning. This damage happens faster in older bodies because of reduced endothelial repair capacity, higher baseline inflammation, and the progressive decline in mitochondrial efficiency that begins accelerating after age 60. Your cells are simply less equipped to recover from this kind of metabolic insult. The reason this meal is ranked number 1 isn't just the glycemic load. It's the combination of glycemic devastation plus oxidized fats plus sodium plus a total absence of the fiber, omega-3 fatty acids, polyphenols, and antioxidants that aging arteries desperately need to maintain their integrity. You're not just eating something harmful. You're eating something harmful while simultaneously removing every possible protective factor from your meal. It's the dietary equivalent of driving without a seatbelt in a rainstorm with no headlights. I want to tell you about Dorothy. Dorothy was 79 years old, a retired nurse from Memphis, Tennessee, someone who had spent her entire career caring for other people's health. She came to me after her 3rd stent placement in 4 years. She was exhausted, scared, and starting to believe that declining health was simply inevitable at her age. When I reviewed her diet diary, I found that pasta night happened 3 times a week in her home. It was comforting. It was familiar. It was what her family had always eaten. We made a plan together, not to eliminate joy from her eating, but to restructure these meals. Lentil pasta instead of white. homemade sauce with olive oil and no added sugar, a side of leafy greens, no garlic bread, a square of dark chocolate instead of the granola bar. Within 1 year, Dorothy had not required a single additional cardiac intervention. Her cardiologist reduced one of her medications. And Dorothy told me something I will never forget. She said, "Dr. Thomas, I finally feel like a nurse again instead of a patient." That is what this information can do. Not just add years to your life, but add life to your years. I need you to hear this wherever you're watching from right now. You are not too old to change this. Your arteries retain a remarkable capacity for healing and adaptation, even at 70, even at 80. The science is clear on this. Plaque progression is not a one-way street. With the right dietary changes, your body can begin stabilizing and in many cases partially reversing soft plaque within months. Independence, clarity of mind, the ability to play with your grandchildren, to travel, to wake up every morning without that shadow of fear, these things are not beyond your reach. They are on the other side of the information you just received. All the scientific studies I've referenced today are listed in the description below. Please look them up, share them with your doctor, and start a conversation. You deserve a physician who takes this seriously. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, please do it right now. Every week I bring you this level of research-backed, senior-specific health information completely free, because I believe you deserve the truth, not a simplified version of it. Hit subscribe, tap the bell, and leave me a comment answering this question. What does your typical lunch look like? Describe it below. I read every single comment, and your answer might just inspire the next video that changes someone else's life. I'll see you in the next one.